have any recommendations for a 16-year-old newly diagnosed with PCOS? Her estrogen levels are very high and has had very painful, heavy periods. Doctor recommended spearmint tea to lower estrogen. She is also struggling with SIBO, candida, H. pylori, and leaky gut. And she's taking the Pilser tea, which we just talked about last week in the class, to treat H. pylori. And she has experienced some hair loss as well. One of the statements in here is that the doctor recommended spearmint tea to lower her estrogen. I think she probably misheard the doctor because spearmint does not directly lower estrogen levels, but it does influence hormone balance by reducing androgen levels, particularly testosterone. And this indirect effect can create an impression of increased estrogen activity to shift in hormone ratios, but she's already got high estrogen, so I'm sure that was just misheard. So just for clarification, spearmint tea is super helpful for reducing androgen levels, which is often used with someone who has PCOS who's showing hirsutism, which is facial hair, and severe acne, which could very likely be a thing, with a teenager, and by reducing like testosterone levels. So I have used spearmint in this case. It does help pretty well. However, if you're actually looking to lower estrogen levels in a teenager, then my go-to is red clover first, because that's going to bind to the receptor sites. It's going to help remove, or fight against those exogenous estrogens that are in our environment by binding to those receptor sites. It's also going to help with high estrogen, and it could also help if there's some low estrogen. But yeah, so that would be what I would try first in a teenager. I don't generally like to go to too many hormone messing herbs in teenagers, because if you're 16 and you have PCOS, you're more than likely you have insulin resistance, which 90% of all PCOS is insulin resistance related. But since I don't have this person here, I don't know. I'm assuming the doctor would know whether it's insulin resistance related or the other 10%, which the other 10% can be difficult to deal with for PCOS. However, if it's insulin resistance, then it's super easy to deal with. Like red clover tea would work really well here. Any of the herbs that we already mentioned for weight loss, because they're going to help balance sugars, particularly holy basil, or if there's some fatigue, I might add on some adaptogens, but typically I try to stay away from those so people aren't abusing them. This is somewhere where you want to make sure the teen is getting enough sleep, and they definitely need to work on the diet, which would be to keep carbs low at that less than 35 carbs per meal, and make sure they're getting enough protein to balance out their blood sugars too. The fact that they've experienced some hair loss means this has probably been going on for a while. I would want to ask, is this teenager eating enough? Are they starving themselves? Hair loss could be very indicative of low nutrient status in a teenager, right? So that would be super concerning. I would want to make sure that they're eating enough calories. And that's where, some herbal infusions can come in super handy there too. So yeah, that's about all the information I can offer, with not knowing, like everything that's going on. But yeah, that's where I would start with a teenager. And definitely, working on the gut health. In the Pilser tea, there's some hibiscus in there. Hibiscus is really good for balancing blood sugars, so that's going to be nice. And it's probably going to help with the SIBO too. So I think they'll get some good support by taking that Pilser tea with some spearmint. And the only thing I would add would be some red clover for sure. Some red clover and nettle infusions. And if they're stressed, definitely add on some oat straw, because that's great nervine. If they're really dry, maybe I would add in some linden as a great nervine because, most teenagers are pretty stressed. They might be doing too many activities or trying to be, an A+ student. So stress can be a big part of PCOS. So definite liver support. Adding in dandelion or burdock would be another one of my favorite herbs to do there. So yeah, like usually if I'm giving somebody an infusion, it's going to be supporting all of those detox pathways because somebody's at this point, they need all those detox pathways supported. So yeah, for sure. If the SIBO is not too bad, then some marshmallow might be nice to add in there too. Or maybe I would add in slippery elm because it's more nutritious if I felt like they weren't getting enough calories in, right? But any other questions? Okay, well that's it for Q&A tonight. Thanks for you joining.
Thanks for joining us on this learning journey. Just a friendly heads up. Our teachers at Herbal Remedium are here to empower you with knowledge about herbs, healthy habits, good food, movement, rest, and mindset shifts, all in support of your general well-being. We're not doctors and definitely don't diagnose, prescribe, or treat diseases. Our information or evaluations are all about helping you understand your body's unique constitution so you can support it naturally by bringing it back into balance, not medical treatment. We'll never tell you to ditch your doctor or meds, so please don't. And any health decisions you make are yours and yours alone. Our role, educators and encouragers. Everything shared here comes from a place of love of herbs and healthy habits and of learning all these things, and the belief that true healing happens when we support the body in doing what God made it to do. Thanks again.